What's up, everybody? I'm Matt.
And I'm Beth.
And today we're going to be reviewing the interior in the 2021 Lexus IS 350 F Sport. So, they've refreshed the IS here for the 2021 model year. It is new, but it is not all new. And you especially see that on this interior where it's just a nice refresh, but it essentially just gives you this big screen, a better stereo, and a few other little trim pieces, which we'll get into here in a minute. Overall, I mean, it's a pretty nice interior still. It's a little cozier, I think, than maybe some of the competing vehicles.
Yeah, it does seem a little small, and then also it seems really dark. Like, the whole interior is black, and I wish there was some kind of color, but I know that you can get different options than this one.
Yeah, so there is like a chestnut brown or something like that you can get, and you can get a red as well, which is I'm a big fan of red interiors. That's always a fun choice in my opinion. But anyway, yeah, moving on to these seats here. So these are the slightly sportier seats you get here in the IS 350 F Sport, and they have a good amount of bolstering to them. It does come out a little bit higher than your average run-of-the-mill luxury sports sedan seat, and it does have the power lumbar adjustment and stuff. And this is the Nulux leather type material. I don't know if it's actual genuine leather, but it does feel very soft and plush. They're also heated and ventilated seats, and that all works very well. But the only thing about these seats is that you don't have any of the customization you get with some of the competing vehicles, where you have adjustable side bolsters primarily. This doesn't have any of that. The Cadillac CT5, that actually has a massaging function. You can't get any of those types of features here. So these are relatively simple seats compared to some of the other competitors.
But in the passenger seat, you do have those power seats as well, so that's really nice.
Not too high, not too low or anything?
No, you can adjust the height, and that's perfect.
Good. The steering wheel here in the IS 350 is the same as it has been for a while now, but there's nothing wrong with that. It has some nice perforated leather here around the 9 and 3 grip, which is very good. You have a nice little 10 and 2 notches. This one has a little F Sport badge on it, and you do have the paddle shifters here, but they are plastic. A lot of the others these days use metal or metal plated plastic at least. These feel a lot cheaper, and it's also interesting how you have this little cruise control stock, which these things date back to the 90s, but I kind of like it because it means you have less buttons on the steering wheel here, but just kind of a funny thing that has been carried over through the decades and continues on here. One nice little thing here is, so one of the new things you get here with 2021 is you can get this ash wood trim, which is like open pore wood that has a nice texture to it. And I think it really blends in nicely with the black leather and stuff. And it's not often that you see that. This is also a heated steering wheel. So to have a heated wood wheel with exposed wood, I haven't seen any other steering wheel actually using exposed wood like this. And I think it's a really nice touch. And again, it's not the entire wheel or anything, but I really like that. Kind of gives a little bit of extra visual appeal.
Yeah, and it does look super cool. I just wish it was brought through more of the car. It's only in the doors right here, and it would be really cool if it was somewhere in the center console here or something like that. So maybe add some more next time. Yeah,
I wish they really would, because I mean, like, you have, like, in this whole shifter area, it's just this black plastic that they could have easily, had that same cutout and just made that whole thing wood. Or even, like, by your glove box area here. I mean, that is just like cheap, typical Toyota plastics there, and that would have been a lot more expensive looking. They put a little strip of wood on top of that or something. Yeah, because I think they had a great thing going here with this new open pore wood. It's really great. Just, more of it would be nice. I agree. Moving on to the gauges here in the IS. They are the same as they've been for many years now. They're inspired by the LFA, which is also a 10-year-old car. And so they're still pretty high-tech looking, though, by modern standards. I mean, a lot of other competitors still use analog gauges for a lot of their stuff. This was, one of the first to go all digital. It's a really concise little display, too. A lot of the others have these massive, digital screens, which is fine, but this gives you all the information you need in this nice little compact shape. It's really great. And then if you do want to have it a little bit more expanded, it has the cool party trick that Lexus has had for many years now, where you hit this button and that actual bezel slides over, and then you have, all your different settings. You can also go into more detailed views for your fuel economy, any of the audio information, all that kind of stuff you can pull up in there. And so I really like that. But then if you want to just see like your fuel economy there in the middle, you can still have that nice compact view. And that also changes with its looks whenever you go up into the Sport mode and Sport Plus and all that kind of stuff. So that's all fun, and I think it all looks very good. Coming over to the center of the dashboard, the biggest change here is this touchscreen infotainment system. So this 10.3-inch screen is familiar if you've been in the newest Lexus stuff. So the RX also gets this same screen, which is touchscreen. Now you still do have to use this little controller for a few things. For example, there is no home menu or anything on this screen to touch, so you still have to hit the menu button here on the actual little control pad here to bring up this sub menu, and then you can select different things in there. And like, for example, getting into the maps, you still have to hit the map shortcut here. You can't go through the screen to do that. And so there are a few things you still, and I end up just actually out of instinct still use this pad because it's just pretty easy to use. It's not my favorite, but I think the real big thing is, this does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integration. It's not wireless, but it is, it does have the integration, and that's really great because then for that stuff where you're used to, touching your smartphone, you can now touch it. And this whole screen is actually 5.9 inches closer. The old IS, it had the screen pushed way further back, and so it would have been really hard to make that touch. So they brought that screen up forward and made it much easier to reach. And yeah, it's a nice screen. Not the best infotainment system out there by any means for a luxury brand, but I still think it's works pretty well, pretty simple to navigate, not too bad. And then everything else is identical from the past 8 years of IS essentially. So you have a lot of climate control here with these little touch capacitive sliders, which are pretty responsive. And then if you do want to just go up by one, you can hit the edges of them. And honestly, I don't have an issue with it. I know some people really hate capacitive touch stuff, and it can be tricky maybe when you're moving, but I personally didn't have any issues with that, and it is automatic, of course, so once you set it, it shouldn't be a big deal.
They do look like they could be push, though, like little buttons, but they're not.
Then you also do have these nice volume and tune knobs, which are made out of ceramic or something. They're these cool to the touch, very heavy and expensive feeling little knobs, and so that's a nice improvement over a lot of the others still use some type of plastic or cheaper feeling metal. These feel really high quality. You also see the CD drive, which is a rare thing you don't see in too many cars these days. And speaking of the stereo here, that is one other improvement they made here for the IS this year, is that this Mark Levinson surround sound system in these top trims, it used to be a 15 speaker system, it's now a 17 speaker system, so they added 2 speakers and it now is 1800 watts. And so I got to sample this stereo a good bit, both with Bluetooth audio streaming and satellite radio and things like that, but especially with the Bluetooth audio, which is a little bit of a cleaner source. It sounded really good. I listened to instrumental stuff, jazz kind of stuff, as well as pop and all that. And I think it's really good. I think it's right up there with some of the best. I think that maybe the new Bose system in the Cadillac CT5 has a little bit more clarity to it, but this is really, one of the top systems. I mean, 1800 watts is a ton of wattage for a car this small, so it's a very powerful stereo, and especially one of the few that offers a CD drive, so you really can have a high audio source as well if you'd like. But moving beyond that stereo, you just have a few buttons here around the shifter. You have your drive mode selector, and then, like I said, that control pad. And that's basically it. But, the one thing you might notice is, basically all the competitors these days have some type of bin in this area. And, the IS is a little bit on the smaller side, because, again, it dates back 8 years ago when luxury sports sedans were a little bit smaller. But there is no storage here, and so that's one area where the IS interior lacks behind basically all the competitors, which do have more storage space than this does.
You do have these nice product placement logos here, and that's a spot that I think maybe they could cut out, and you could throw just your phone or something little in there and give you just a little bit of space.
Yeah, something. Especially this is, a new IS. I thought they would have maybe tried to do a little bit more to, rearrange some of these buttons or do something to open up some kind of storage space. But unfortunately, as far as storage space goes, all we have here is a pocket in the door with a bottle holder. And then you have your 2 cup holders and then the center armrest, which has some padding to it here. Feels pretty nice and soft.
But I just feel like there's always something that you need to throw somewhere, something small. And right here, all you have is the cup holder, so.
Yeah, so you're gonna have to open up this center armrest to, store anything. And in this area, you'll see that you have 2 USB jacks, an auxiliary jack, and a power outlet in there. And then a decent amount of space. You can see I can fit, my sunglasses and my COVID essentials here in the year 2020. But otherwise, it's not a lot of space. And that's just one of the things that, again, when you're doing a vehicle that was, started 8 years ago and you don't make large changes, that's just one of the areas where it's going to be down on the competition a little bit. I mean, otherwise, though, it is still nice and feels pretty modern in here, with the analog clock, I think is a nice little touch. And you do have some nice padding here by your knee area. I mean, this is really plush. All the elbow points are really plush. So, it feels expensive in here and it does feel nice. It just feels a little dated, especially if, you're familiar with Lexus stuff from the past 10 years. You'll feel right at home in here, but it just doesn't move the ball forward very far, aside from, again, the screen upgrade, which is a very important upgrade, but I just was hoping for a little bit more here in the front seats. Moving on to the back seat here in the IS 350, that is also the same as before, and one of the big sore exclusions is you don't have any storage in the doors there. There's no pockets or bottle holders like you get in, again, basically every single competitor these days. So that means that, as far as storage in that back seat goes, you have a fold-down center armrest, which has two little pop-out cup holders. Not super secure, but you do have some cup holders there. And then when you look forward, you just have two air vents. There's no USB jacks back there, no power outlets. Those are all things that all the competition basically these days gives you. Hookups back there. Some even give you like their own climate control back there. Or at the very least, you have at least some power outlets and some bottle holders. You don't get that here in this. As far as space goes in the back seat there, now I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I have about 2 inches of legroom to spare, which I'd say, is towards the bottom of the class. Again, because in the past 8 years, everyone else has made their vehicles a little bit larger, so you have more space. I'd say the only one that's pretty close to this is the Genesis G70. That also has a pretty tight back seat, and that's one of the sore spots of that vehicle as well. The back seat will work as long as the front seat passengers aren't too tall, but, it just, again, this desperately needs an actual new generation with a longer wheelbase to give it, a competitive back seat, I think. But in the meantime, this works if you're not going to use a back seat a lot or you have smaller people back there, it'll work okay. Also, trunk space here in the IS 350, of course, is unchanged as well. And, it's a decent amount of trunk space back there. I will say that is a little bit bigger than the G70. But again, some of the newest competitors do have larger trunks these days. But there's no really complaints there. I think it's, pretty wide. It goes pretty far back, and beneath the floor you do have a spare tire still, which is nice that you have that, but you don't have any storage under the floor there or anything, so, just kind of a give and take there, but it is nice to have the spare tire for sure. Overall here, I think that the, new IS is, pretty nice. I just, again, wish there was more to it. And it also is, it's a little tough to justify the price tag still, because this one, as tested, is just under $57,000. These start just under $43,000 for a base motor, a normal kind of base trim. And so, maybe in those 40s it's a little more competitive, but once you're getting up to, $56,000, like, that's the same price as like your C-Class. And
I have a lot more space.
You have a lot more space, you have more storage, you have ambient lighting that looks really cool, you have way more wood, you have way more metal, all those types of things. It's tough. You have a little bit less horsepower than you get here in the Lexus, but you actually have, basically the same amount of torque as you get here in the Lexus. So, as far as all that kind of stuff goes, it's just, I feel like this is still a little bit pricey. Now, obviously, the Lexus, you have their reliability. This thing will run for the next 20 years problem-free, most likely. And that's something you can't say for the Germans a lot of times. So that is one perk of the Lexus. But, even stuff like the Genesis G70 for the same money will give you way more horsepower, way more performance. And so, this interior feels nice, but these days, I don't know if it feels $56,000 nice.
Right.
But yeah, so overall, some nice improvements here. I'm glad that they did at least improve this, because with other Lexus products, they're more than happy to let them, be ancient. And so I'm glad that they at least have updated this here. But I still wish they would have done a little bit more.
Yeah, me too. Because I just feel like it is nice in here, and it's a comfortable place to be. It feels luxurious, but not as luxurious as a lot of other luxury competitors, to be honest.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, so that's just the way it is, unfortunately, here. But let us know your thoughts on the interior of the IS 350 in the comments below. Huge thanks to Lexus for providing this vehicle for us to review. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.